Judicial Watch will continue to pursue litigation, FOIAs, on the abuses of Trump. We've got a dozen cases at least currently. More are coming. And we're going to keep on speaking out and educating the American people as well. First up is the constitutional crisis, the election crisis, the rule of law crisis, which is the guilty verdict, and I use the term verdict lightly in the sense that I don't believe it deserves much notice or weight morally or legally, but I guess that will be a debate, right? But this verdict against President Trump, where he was found guilty of 34 charges, we're not quite sure technically what he was found guilty of, because as you may recall, you had this crazed thinking by Soros prosecutor Bragg, enabled by Judge Merchan, that he didn't need to tell anyone what Trump was supposedly messing with documents for, in terms of what other crimes he was trying to commit by messing with the documents. And it wasn't until the jury instructions that Merchant issued that we found out there were maybe 3 crimes, maybe more, who knows, based on the instructions. It was confusing, but we don't know what crimes Trump supposedly committed by messing with these records. Not that there was any evidence that he messed with the records. So this is a verdict of guilty for non-crimes. There was no evidence that would have warranted any jury hearing this, and it's no surprise, it's still upsetting and shocking because it's so abusive, that this railroad, the railroading of Trump, resulted in this terrible development of him being found guilty on 34 felonies over a dispute about $130,000 cash payment or cash payments he reimbursed his lawyer for in handling a straightforward non-disclosure agreement. Just incredible. And here is my reaction to the verdict as it was coming down in my office.
Well, this is terrible. Trump's been found guilty, at least on some charges. Rigged proceeding, unsurprisingly, has led to this awful result for the rule of law, our elections, our Constitution, and obviously for President Trump personally, an improper, abusive conviction of him. It doesn't get any worse than this in terms of a miscarriage of justice, certainly for someone as notable as President Trump has been, #1 candidate for president, basically railroaded by a Biden donor judge and a Democratic Party politician, Alvin Bragg. Just a terrible day for America.
It sure is, isn't it? And here was my instant reaction. I was literally, the verdict hadn't even completely come through yet. But here was our official Judicial Watch reaction. I filmed a statement at my desk. Here we are.
Judicial Watch denounces the absurd verdict and Soviet-style criminal proceeding that has so abused President Trump. What just happened to Trump up in New York is criminal. The guilty verdict against Trump is no surprise, though. It's considering how rigged it was, that Kangaroo court proceeding, which was run by a biased, conflicted judge and an unethical, politicized Democratic Party prosecutorial team run by Alvin Bragg. It's a terrible day for the rule of law, and it's going to go down in infamy. And this whole process has been compromised, and this verdict should be overturned in an emergency fashion. The evidence shows that Trump committed no crimes, and that this is a prosecution about nothing. This and other Democratic Party political prosecutions for Trump are an abomination under law and destabilizing to our nation. Judicial Watch will continue to expose in court the truth about these attacks on our republic, free and fair elections, of course, President Trump personally, and the U.S. Constitution. And unfortunately, in the meantime, our elections have been compromised already by these political prosecutions, including especially this verdict today.
Yeah, really terrible. And I noted on one of my tweets, or just been generally noting, our elections are officially compromised. This has resulted in, obviously, well, here, the left and the Biden gang don't care if the sham verdict is ultimately overturned. It was all about abusing the system to rig the election to the greatest extent possible. Indeed, they kept Trump a political prisoner up in New York for 6 weeks in the middle of a close election and have a guilty verdict now to point to for the rest of the campaign. Mission accomplished for the left. The election has officially been compromised. And I was reading, the Wall Street Journal had an editorial on it today in reaction to the verdict. The New York and the Wall Street Journal is no friend of Donald Trump. They're anti-Trump generally. But they did note if Trump loses loses this year, and as many expect, this verdict is overturned in a year or so, what are voters for Trump going to conclude anything other than that this was a successful rigging of the election? So when I say the election's already been compromised, does it mean there will be a different result than otherwise would have been? Not necessarily, but it does mean that result will be more difficult to achieve. And it's not, you shouldn't have to overcome abusive conduct by law enforcement officials and judges and juries in order to win the presidency. You shouldn't have your freedom put on the line because you're daring to oppose Biden. And what's frustrating to me especially is, if you've been following what I've been saying about these issues for the last year or two, especially since Republicans took control of the House of Representatives, I've been asking for and demanding on your behalf that they do something about these abuses, that they use the powers entrusted to them under the Constitution to defund these abuses, hold those involved accountable. And there's been practically zero interest in doing so. Yes, there's a subpoena here and there. There's a statement here and there. They go up and visit with Trump at the trial here and there. But in the case of Bragg, why didn't they defund him? They haven't defunded Smith yet. Now they're issuing subpoenas. I see Jim Jordan issued a subpoena, which is fine for Bragg and maybe for others. But it's a day late and a dollar short, isn't it? He's already been convicted. How's that going to stop Trump from being sentenced to jail in July, if indeed that does happen? I mean, why are we funding the judicial system in New York City if they're abusing the civil rights and trying to interfere interfering and hijacking our elections? And Congress had an opportunity. The House had an opportunity. Republican-controlled House had opportunity after opportunity, not only under Speaker Johnson, but previously under Speaker McCarthy, to defund this and tell the establishment Washington, the Biden administration, the Senate, that if you want your government funded, you're going to do it without funding for the abuse of Trump. So Alvin Bragg, people say, well, how can they get away with it? Because no one holds them accountable, at least those in a position to. Merchant has violated numerous ethics rules. We already know that. Well, he violated one officially, right? There was a finding he violated the ethics rule prohibiting campaign contributions, and he was dinged for it, slap on the wrist. And as I disclosed to you last week, in his handling of a pro-Trump witness, he went ballistic and violated another ethics rule based on what I saw and heard, meaning keeping an even temperament in a trial. And he went ballistic, threw the media out, and started attacking a witness. Verbally attacking, to be clear. This case should have been nowhere near a courthouse because there was no case, and certainly Judge Merchant should have been nowhere near this case. And it was rigged in 6 ways to Sunday. There was no good faith basis to pursue the charges initially. They had been overtaken by the statute of limitations, and the only reason they supposedly got past the statute of limitations issues is by pretending these were felonies by saying they were in commission of another crime. There were no other crimes that were committed. And there was no evidence that a crime was committed initially as it relates to falsifying business records. President Trump, or people for him, delineated legal expenses as legal expenses. But even once they elevated it to so-called felonies to avoid a statute of limitations, they still had a statute of limitations problem. You know how they got around that? With this extension of statute of limitations due to COVID. There's nothing normal about this case. It's, I keep on saying, an abomination unto law. It ruined my birthday. My birthday was May 30th. I turned 56. Well, that's from a previous birthday, but I always post that picture. I can't believe I'm 56. I don't, you know, not to veer too much off topic, it's not so much I can't believe I'm 56. I'm sure as you get older, everyone understands what I mean. It's like, oh no, I'm almost 60. And I'm sure when I'm 63, I'm going to be like, oh no, I'm almost 65. Well, anyway, as I said in my update yesterday, I did a special live feed reaction yesterday. You know, we should pray for President Trump. He's obviously upset about it. He's right to be upset about it. And Biden did it, as far as I'm concerned. Biden did it. He's responsible. Top officials for Joe Biden, a top official in his Justice Department moved over to help Bragg. Here it is. Biden did it. I'm overstating the point to make a point. The great Miranda Devine wrote, there he is, Matthew Colangelo, and that's the official I was talking about, the former DNC political consultant, but who left his job as third-ranking official. He was appointed acting in Biden's DOJ in December 2022 to take a lesser job in Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's office as a senior counsel in a criminal case against Trump. By the way, there's anarchy in New York City, and they are spending untold resources trying to get Trump on these penny ante made-up charges. And the jury failed. I mean, everyone says, well, we have to respect the jury verdict. No, we don't. If the verdict is at odds with common sense and evidence and law, why we can't respect it. We have to overturn it. This verdict needs to be overturned on an emergency basis. Now, does that mean it will be overturned on an emergency basis? I don't know. But that would be the approach I would take. That this vandalization of Trump's record needs to be erased as soon as possible. I mean, you want to know what Biden's approach on this is? Did you see his press conference that he just held? Let's go to the video of that press conference because some folks tried to ask him questions about it. Look at his reaction.
Thank you very much.
Try to avoid his
Mr. President,
cognitive difficulties.
can you tell
here.
us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
Should he be on the ballot, sir?
I don't know how to read that. I mean, it looks like he's smiling like the sugar-eating grin. or it looks like he's completely out of it. Either way, it's disturbing. But the Biden campaign had people outside the courthouse as the jury was about to deliberate, I recall. Remember Robert De Niro? And I know a lot of folks were making fun of the Robert De Niro press conference. And it's like, he's out there saying what he wants to say on behalf of the Biden campaign, demanding that Trump be found guilty or saying that Trump's guilty. But that approach that De Niro had, where he kind of, was playing to his character that people are used to seeing in the movies, it was no more sophisticated than what the judge and the prosecutors were doing to Trump. It was rigged in ways that, when you look at the way that the closing arguments were handled, the way the judge constrained the testimony that was helpful to Trump, while it being expansive and allowing testimony that wasn't necessarily unhelpful to Trump, but had nothing to do with the trial and the issue at hand, but was just designed to inflame the jury and smear them. And of course, my guess is, even despite Biden's thing, they're going to be a little bit nervous about this. I've noticed a little bit of a quietness from Biden world about this. I think they're nervous about how the American people are taking this. And my instinct is, and it may be Pollyannish, that more Americans than not are upset about what has happened to Trump. Now, we've had a few Republicans come out, and here are some reactions from Republican leaders about this. Speaker Johnson: "Today is a shameful day in history. Democrats cheered as they convicted the leader of the opposing party on ridiculous charges predicated on the testimony of a disbarred convicted felon, who, by the way, admitted to stealing money from Trump while he was on the stand." Purely political exercise, not a legal one. The American people see this as lawfare, and they know it is wrong. I just want to say something. Is lawfare, it's a phrase I use too, so I'm not criticizing Johnson for saying this, but lawfare almost minimizes it. It's warfare. They're going to take his freedom away if they can get away with it. The aim is to put him in jail for the rest of his life. Ted Cruz: "This is a dark day for America. The entire trial has been a sham, and it's nothing more than a political persecution." Robert Kennedy Jr., an opponent of President Trump: "The Democratic Party's strategy is to beat President Trump in the courtroom rather than the ballot box." I got to get a little closer to see this one. "This will backfire in November, and even worse, it is profoundly undemocratic." Elon Musk: "Indeed, great damage was done today to the public's faith in the American legal system. If a former president can be criminally convicted over such a trivial matter, motivated by politics rather than justice, then anyone is at risk of a similar fate." Ron DeSantis had a good statement. In America, he concludes, "the rule of law should be applied in a dispassionate, even-handed manner and not become captive to the political agenda of some kangaroo court." Now, the left isn't, as I noted earlier, they're not going to be embarrassed about this. This is part of, in my view, a scheme to help ensure Biden retains power, and they're able to expand power in Congress. So this is just election interference 101, these trials and these anti-Trump prosecutions. And they're not going to be embarrassed. What are they going to worry about? What's going to happen to Alvin Bragg? What's going to happen to Judge Merchan? Nothing. Well, if the past is any prologue, nothing. If I were President Trump, the minute I got into office, if I were to be reelected, For a third time? Anyway, I guess I'll avoid that little debate. But if Trump is elected in November, I'd recommend the following to him. He appoint personally a special prosecutor and direct him to investigate the deprivation of his civil rights and the civil rights of other Americans, that grand conspiracy to do that involving these New York Democratic politicians, the Justice Department, Joe Biden, whoever's involved, Fani Willis, investigate the deprivation of his civil rights under the color of law. Core civil rights issue. That's what should be done. You know, and Trump understands what's happening to him. Sometimes, you know, the danger is, you know, sometimes politicians get abused and they don't even know what's their, they've been punched so hard, they don't know what's happening to them. But that's not the case with Trump, because he's known for years what the aim is and what he has to do to overcome it. And he had a press conference. Well, this was his immediate response yesterday. I had a watch video on Instagram of it.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now, from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one.
Yeah. I'm fact-checking that. True. And he had a press conference at his office in the Trump Tower where he expanded on this. Let's run that clip.
We're losing our country. And I really think that this is an event, what took place yesterday with this judge. Look, we have conflicted, but he's a crooked judge, and you'll understand that. And I say that knowing that it's very dangerous for me to say that, and I don't mind, because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country and to save our Constitution. I don't mind. So we will continue the fight. We're going to.
Yeah, these are tough times. You know, the danger is we lose our Republican form of government without really knowing it, and that we have these the appearance of a constitutional republic, but none of the practices. So when you have a Justice Department or politicians up in New York who are allied with the president, literally a Biden donor judge, railroad his political opponent in order to convict him and try to get him jailed before the election, how does that comport with a constitutional republic and the way it's supposed to work? So I don't want America to turn into a zombie constitutional republic where we're kind of the walking dead in terms of the rule of law and constitutional government. And, you know, and of course I feel badly, you know, because I know President Trump slightly. I know some of the other folks who have been targeted by the regime. Heck, I've been targeted by the regime. Judicial Watch has been targeted by the regime. So I know what some of these folks are going through. And, the president, has a family. He's a human being. And, I had a reaction yesterday to it. I don't want to repeat it because I think I said it ably last night, and I'll just show it to you again here. This is an Alice in Wonderland, like Twilight Zone type of nightmare for the rule of law, and obviously President Trump personally. And I encourage you all to pray for Trump and his family. I mean, he's a strong man. He's going to, keep on fighting. But no one wants to be found guilty of a crime, and it's a real abuse of him. So he needs the support of the American people. I don't say this because of politics. I say this because he's a crime victim, in my view, a crime victim. So what's next? Well, he will be sentenced next month or in July. I think all bets are off as to what will happen. I mean, everyone's presuming in the ordinary course he wouldn't be sentenced to jail. Well, I'm hoping he's able to file some type of appeal that even puts that sentencing off, but I don't know. I don't know enough about New York law, and nor have I seen commentators from lawyers who supposedly do know that they know what's going to happen. So it's kind of unclear what's going to happen next. My instinct is that the debate about how this, that he won't be jailed, but I think there's a significant possibility he will be, given Merchan's bias and extreme anti-Trump agenda. And of course, the district attorney, the Soros-backed district attorney, Democrat politician, he gets a say, or at least he gets to chime in. So he could go to jail. And as the president suggested, he's willing to go to jail as a political prisoner. Now, these cases against him in Florida and D.C. and Georgia, they seem to be kind of just hanging on a thread. They're certainly unlikely to go forward anytime soon, certainly not before the election. But they're still going to be distracting. There'll be activity and distraction. There'll be activity in the cases in a way, I think Trump has to be down in Florida, for instance, for several days related to the classified documents case, or the allegedly classified documents case, because I don't think any of those documents were really classified. They were in his personal possession, as the law requires and the Constitution dictates. But it's still a distraction. I mean, I don't know if you saw what Jack Smith pulled last week. It was after our video here last week. He filed some crazed demand with Judge Cannon down in Florida, telling Cannon to gag Trump from criticizing the FBI's raid and the Biden regime's raid of his home. So Joe Biden, through his appointees, was asking a federal judge to shut down the ability of President Trump to criticize him for abusing President Trump. And Judge Cannon essentially told, again, the special counsel to calm down, follow the rules. If you want to refile it, you're going to have to follow the rules and consulting with the other side, which you didn't do in this gambit, this PR stunt. So I doubt Judge Cannon is going to suppress Trump's speech the way the abuser, Judge Merchan, did. That's why the left hates Judge Cannon, because she's treating Trump fairly. Do I agree with all of her rulings? No. But she's trying to call balls and strikes. in an honest umpire-like way, and that's not what the left wants. So that's why she's targeted by the left. Look at all the negative press you see about Judge Cannon in so-called mainstream left-wing publications that would never be tolerated about Judge Merchan and or Judge Chutkan up here, who has been vehemently anti-Trump as well. So Judicial Watch will continue to pursue litigation, FOIAs, on the abuses of Trump. We've got a dozen cases at least currently. More are coming. And we're going to keep on speaking out and educating the American people as well, because we can't just stop. I mean, we just have to keep on fighting. It's a battle. Sometimes the battle for the rule of law, you lose. And Trump lost. It was rigged. He lost. He may be vindicated in the end, but he's still got to keep on fighting because there are other battles and other things he needs to protect in terms of his freedom specifically as the process continues. Now, as a candidate, I would encourage any candidate when they're abused just to keep on fighting, especially if the government's trying to derail their campaign. We've never had anything like that in American history before. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.